Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to talk about how to clean your makeup brushes. I've gotten a lot of questions about how to clean your makeup brushes. What do you use? So if you're interested in getting the answer to that question, then you're in the right place. We are about to get into it.
I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf. I'm a lone wolf.
Alright guys, so we're going to get into some demo on how I personally wash my makeup brushes, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what I have learned to use to wash my brushes with after lots of trial and error when it comes to finding and trying different things to wash my makeup brushes and my beauty blenders with. So keep in mind that this is just what works best for me, with lots of experience, with lots of brushes, and lots of trial and error. So this is all definitely opinion, but this is what works for me and some incredibly expensive makeup brushes, and they have worked perfectly and have held up fantastically for well over 2 years now that I've been using this particular method with this particular product. So take that for what it is. I know everybody's gonna have differing opinions out there, so this is just what works for me right up front. All right, so there is a difference between synthetic and natural brushes. So for those of you that don't know, a natural brush is a brush that is natural hair. So this actually is either going to be goat hair or blue squirrel hair or some kind of hair that is found naturally on some creature in nature. So that is what a natural brush is. Now you also have synthetic brushes. These are going to be brushes that are man-made bristles. These are a little more durable, not quite as soft, but these work really, really well with cream products. So there is definitely a time and place for some synthetic brushes. I actually know nowadays that synthetic brushes are getting so good when it comes to technology that I have a hard time telling between synthetic and natural hair brushes. So for girls out there that are looking to make a cruelty-free change, there are definitely some beautiful options in the makeup space when it comes to synthetic brushes and eye brushes. Typically, synthetic brushes are really good and kind of known for working on the face, but not so much when it comes to the eye. A lot of people prefer natural brushes when it comes to the eye, but nowadays there are some really pretty eye brushes out there that are synthetic. Now, when it comes to caring for your brushes, it does make a difference between natural and synthetic hairs. Typically and traditionally, you always wanted to use something a little more gentler when it came to natural hair. So you hear a lot of people talking about things like baby shampoo when it comes to natural hair bristles. You do kind of want to treat these a little carefully. They can't take as much abuse as a synthetic hair brush can. And traditionally, natural hair brushes usually are a little bit better made when it comes to craftsmanship of the handle and the ferrule itself. So those natural hair brushes people tend to handle with like kid gloves, and they really, really want to take care of them. And I get that. I'm the same way. There has been a significant amount of money invested into these brushes. They're incredibly expensive, so I only want something that's going to treat my hairs on my brushes right and not cause any shedding or destruction to the brush. So all of these recommendations are made with that in mind. Number one, how often or how frequently should you wash your makeup brushes? I wash my makeup brushes after every use. My sister thinks that I am a lunatic, but I am that girl that just I can't stand it. I can't stand to look at a brush that has product on it and dip it into more product and then put that on my face. I'm just funny like that. Now, when it comes to how often you should clean and wash your personal brushes, that's honestly going to be your personal preference. Now, I wouldn't go longer than a week. I think that's pushing it. But again, that's me personally. I've seen some brushes that have not been washed in, you know, a couple of months. So there's that. But I think that you should wash your brushes as often as you are comfortable with. I don't think there's any like proven method out there. Obviously, common sense is going to tell you that the longer you allow, especially cream products, to sit out in the open and sitting on your brush. I mean, our faces have bacteria, and you touch things with your hands and then it goes into a container that's been touched and has product in it, and you know, it can grow things. So my suggestion would be just don't go too long. Same thing with the beauty blender. I wash my brushes in my beauty blender every night before I go to bed. It's just a little routine that I have myself. When I'm taking my makeup off at night, I take my makeup off, and I typically will put a mask on, and I will clean my brushes, clean my beauty blenders, lay them out to dry, take my mask off, do my skincare, go to bed. That's like my routine at night. So I also wash my beauty blender every day. And there's a reason for that. A lot of times when you wait a couple of days to wash your beauty blender, it can be incredibly hard to get product out of that sponge, no matter what you use. There's no magic bullet that's going to get 2.5 weeks worth of foundation out of that sucker. You're going to have to wash it a couple of times. And I say that from experience. But if you do stay on top of it and wash it like every day or two, then you'll find that you can get a clean beauty blender and you don't really have to worry about it. So I can tell you that the techniques that I do, doing it every single day, with the product that I use, has not caused any additional fallout on my brushes, and it doesn't cause my beauty blenders to like break down or fall apart, which is important because there are some soaps out there that can't handle my cleaning routine, where either the soap will start breaking down my beauty blender because I'm doing it every day, or because I wash my brushes every day, a lot of shedding will start happening. So that typically will happen when I'm using a harsher chemical or a harsher soap to wash my beauty blenders with. But the problem is, typically the harsher the soap, the better it works. So it's a little annoying sometimes that those harsh products, you know, are too hard on our brushes and too hard on our sponges, and they make them fall apart, because usually those are the things that actually get the foundation and the things off of our bristles that we want to be clean. I did find a happy medium though, so I have a product that actually works really, really well, and I think you'll be surprised at what it is. So I'm going to show you guys how I wash my natural brushes and my synthetic brushes. Honestly, it's not any different, except I'm a little gentler when it comes to my natural brushes. First, I'm going to talk to you guys about what I actually use to wash my brushes. So I use a product called African Black Soap. Now, the African Black Soap is traditionally used for your face and your body. And I actually found this soap trying to find something to combat my teenage son was dealing with very acneic and acne prone skin. And I worked with a lady that had very severe eczema, and she swore by African Black Soap, specifically the African Black Soap that's made by Shea Moisture. Shea Moisture is sold in Target, drugstores, CVS, Ulta even has Shea Moisture online, so you can buy this bar of African Black Soap anywhere that Shea Moisture is sold. She recommended the African Black Soap to me. And I did a little bit of research on it, obviously, before I recommended it to my son. And let's talk about some of the benefits of African Black Soap on the skin so that you can kind of understand how that translates into your brushes. So the first thing that African Black Soap does is that it calms the skin. So people that have eczema and people that have very acneic and irritated skin, there are a lot of conditioners and soothing properties in African Black Soap that help calm those things down, which is nice. It also has antibacterial properties. So the African Black Soap has what they call, and I'm just reading it here from this study that was done on African Black Soap, it has phytochemicals and oils that are derived from plants, and these components have flavonoids, alkaloids, and other bioactive compounds that can fight bacterial infections and prevent further infection. So it has a lot of antibacterial ingredients in the soap as well, which translates fantastic when you're using it on your brushes. Also, typically synthetic soaps contain a lot of chemicals and artificial fragrances, and African black soap does not. So this has plant products, and it's fragrance free. It's artificial fragrance free. So obviously the ingredients have a scent, but it's not because there's artificial fragrance in the soap. It's incredibly gentle, and it helps with balancing your skin's pH, which is one of the reasons why people really love this soap. I like it for my skin, and my kid loves it, but I also really like it because of these different properties when it comes to my brushes. There's no harsh chemicals, there's no artificial stuff in there that's going to eat away or break down the bristles on my brushes. So one of the main reasons why people love this soap if they're acneic or if they suffer from eczema is because this soap is incredibly effective at breaking down excessive dirt and oil on the skin. So it is like a deep clean purge on the skin. The other thing that it's really good for because of that is really getting in and getting those foundation oils and all of those foundation products that are in your brush. It just gets it all out. Whatever is in this soap, and I've looked at the ingredients, and it is just a ton of plant extracts and plantain extracts, and you know, the soap itself comes from the West African culture, and honestly, the ingredients change depending on what region of Africa it's coming from, because the actual recipe for this is a family thing to West African culture, and each region kind of has a different recipe. And Shea Moisture, the lady that owns Shea Moisture, this is a recipe that was in her family for African black soap. Now, her specific recipe has shea butter in it, which is fantastic for conditioning the hairs on your bristles so that they're nice and conditioned and soft. But it also has all of these plant and fruit extracts, which are so good for the skin. But there is also a lot of stuff that really gets in there and gets out all of the dirt. And the great thing about it is that it's all natural ingredients, and it's so incredibly effective. Now, I will say, when I actually use this soap on my face, it's one of the few soaps that I used where I actually, you know, I used it on my face and on my body, and when I got out of the shower and I dried my skin, it was one of the first times that I was like ever used a soap and immediately could feel the difference on my skin. I was like, oh wow, everything felt so nice and tight, and not tight in a dry way, just firmer and clean, and I can't describe it. If you ever see a bar of African black soap and you've never tried it, you guys, I swear by this stuff. It's amazing, and it's really, really good to clean your products with. So let's go ahead and get into how I wash synthetic brushes. I'm pretty rough with them. You can be pretty rough with a synthetic brush, but I'll get into that with you guys here. So I always start by having some kind of pad in the sink. You can get these little makeup pads where you run your bristles across it just about anywhere, and you can get them now on Amazon for incredibly cheap. So I get the water going, I get my brush wet. It's important just to try and keep the water on the bristles. Try not to douse your whole handle or get the ferrule of your brush wet, because there's glue in there, and every time you get that wet and it dries, and you get it wet and it dries, and you get it wet and it dries, you're just breaking down the glue that's holding your ferrule together. So try and keep the water concentrated on just the bristles. Then I just swipe it a couple of times across the soap. I scrub it on the makeup pad, and then I rinse, and make sure that you thoroughly rinse the soap out, and then I lay them flat to dry, or I'll hang them upside down to dry. because again, you don't want these to dry right side up because the water will drain down into the ferrule where that glue is and will cause breakdown in product. So that's why you always want to dry them either upside down or lay them flat to dry. Now, when it comes to synthetic brushes, I'm a little rougher. I can really kind of grind them into the soap and really kind of grind them on the makeup pad. But other than that, there really isn't that big of a difference in the way that I brush my synthetic and my natural brushes. I'm just a lot gentler when it comes to actually washing the natural brushes. But with my synthetic brushes, I can really just go in and make sure that they're good and clean. But again, same rule applies. Don't get the ferrule wet, and do attempt to dry them by laying them flat or hanging them upside down, because you really want to protect the glue that's in the ferrule that's holding the brush together. Now, when it comes to retaining the shape of your brushes, a lot of people get very frustrated with brushes because they will wash their brush and then they will lay it flat and they come in the next day and it's completely misshapen. It doesn't look like it did when you first bought it. I get that question a lot. How do you retain the shape of your brushes? Mine are all just big poofy puffballs now, and they've all lost their original shape. And that's because I use brush guards. So every time I wash a brush, I slide a brush guard up and I either hang it upside down or I lay it flat, and I don't take the brush guard off until after it's dried. Using this method will make sure that your brush retains the same shape that it had when you first purchased the brush. Is it necessary to do on every single brush that you have? No. For example, if you have a synthetic brush that looks like this and it's just a concealer brush, when you wash this brush, it's going to dry just like this. It doesn't need a brush guard on it, you know, to keep it from like fanning out and drying in a funny kind of way. I would worry more about a brush guard when I'm talking about using natural hair brushes that look like this, or even natural hair fluffy blending brushes, because oftentimes they won't retain this nice thin pretty shape after you wash them. Sometimes synthetics will bounce back a lot better than a natural hairbrush will and retain its shape a lot better than a natural hairbrush will. But sometimes even synthetics, like for example, this is a synthetic, the JH06 is a synthetic, but when I wash this brush, it is all kinds of a mess when it's wet after I've gotten all of the soap out of the brush and I lay it down flat. I have to put a brush guard on it for it to retain this beautiful shape that it has. And honestly, guys, when it comes to applying your makeup, you want your brushes to retain their shape. They're in the shape that they are for a very specific feature and a very specific benefit. And if you take that shape away, you're stuck with just a bunch of round puffy hair on the end of a stick, and it kind of defeats the purpose of the shape of the brush. So I'll use these two as an example. So this is a fluffy blending brush. It's meant to be blown out and really fluffy at the tip because the purpose of it is to blend out the edges of your eyeshadow and get a big blown out blend and get a nice pretty gradient going on the eye. This, however, is a crease brush. It's meant to be very thin and very tapered because you need that thin tapered tip to really get into the crease correctly and blend in that crease to get a very specific crease blend. But if I didn't shape this brush would look like this brush when I let it dry. You see what I'm saying? So shape matters when it comes to application of your product, and if you want that brush to function the way that it's meant to function, then you need to make sure that it retains its shape. You can get brush guards on Amazon for like $5 for a pack of 50 of them. So definitely get brush guards if you don't have them. I think they're absolutely crucial when it comes to caring for your makeup brushes. So a couple of things I forgot to go over. When it comes to pressed pigments and really like strong pigment like the greens and pinks and browns that are hard to get out, especially when you're dealing with a white natural hairbrush that tends to be very absorbent with pigment, this soap gets all of that pigment out and does it in a fairly simple process and allows you to rinse your natural bristled eye brushes very, very clean, and it still leaves your eye bristles feeling very soft when you're done and they've dried. They're not hard and crunchy, and it doesn't cause shedding, but it does make them nice and soft when you're done with them. But it does a great job of breaking product down and just allowing for a really good clean. This particular pigment that I'm washing out right here is a brown pressed pigment that always gives me a hard time out of this particular brush, which is my Smith Cosmetics brush, and it does an excellent job of making sure that this brush gets clean in a very short amount of time. Now, when it comes to washing my beauty blender with African black soap, I really just get the beauty blender, I rub it all the way around itself on the soap and get it nice and saturated, and I'll run it underneath the water and get a nice lather going. And then with pressing motions, you want to press that foundation out of the sponge, and then I'll rinse it out, and it rinses out beautifully. Your sponge is so nice and clean. I love the way that this soap performs with my beauty blenders, almost more than the way that it does with my brushes. This is one of my favorite ways to clean my beauty blenders. It's actually the only way that I clean my beauty blenders. And I even use this soap on my velour puffs. I will lather these velour puffs up with African black soap and leave them out to dry overnight, and the next day they're just nice and soft and clean. And I love the fact that it has these antibacterial properties. It also has all those conditioning agents in it, but then it has that really hard working function to it where it just breaks down dirt and oil just like it does on your face. It does the same thing on your brushes and your sponges, and for me it's been a godsend. I have one specifically for brushes, and then I have one in the shower too. If I could buy stock in African black soap, I would. It's like the best product ever, and those women in West Africa knew what they were doing. They created an amazing product. All right, guys, that's it. That's how I clean and wash and maintain my makeup brushes. Let me know what techniques work for you guys down in the comments below. Let's get a conversation started about how we clean our makeup brushes and beauty blenders. If you guys have any additional questions, don't hesitate to reach out and get in touch with me on Instagram. You can DM me at ErikaApproved. Other than that, guys, I think that's about it. Listen, if you're new here, welcome. Thank you so much for coming by. I really appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe before you leave. Give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you guys in the next video. Mwah!